On the morning it was announced that Grimsby's Fishing Heritage Centre will offer free entry to ex-trawlermen, scenes like these are a welcome sight. Many former fishermen and their families gathered for a consultation about new developments in their fight for compensation.
Well, today we've brought former trawlermen into the Fishing Heritage Centre so we could talk to these men about compensating them for losing their livelihoods as a result of the Cod Wars. Now, the Cod Wars we're talking about were in the 1970s, and there's been a long and difficult fight to get justice for these men.
Many of Grimsby's fishermen lost their livelihoods as a result of the 1970s Cod Wars, a conflict arising from Iceland's declaration of new fishing limits.
It was because of government action they lost their livelihoods. There was the Cod Wars, where there was big disputes with Iceland about fishing limits. And at the time, if we're going back to the late 60s, early 70s, that was Grimsby's livelihood. It was its lifeblood, was the fishing industry. But there were these disputes with Iceland. Iceland wanted a 200-mile limit, which meant that the Grimsby vessels would no longer be able to fish. So that was what the Cod Wars were about. When we had an agreement with Iceland to end the so-called Cod War, Iceland said, OK, we'll let Grimsby trawlers come in and we'll give them a quota. But the British government refused to accept the quota. So these men had nowhere to fish anymore. So the whole industry withered away. Thousands of people lost their jobs.
And when we come in dock, we settled up, got our money, was told that's it, finished. Get your gear off the ship, and away you go. That was it. There was no compensation or redundancy. Miners got 20,000 plus, steel workers got 20,000 plus. All sympathy in the papers, you know, poor miners, poor steel workers. All I got was about 11 quid odd days, and away you go. 28-year-old, you know, wife and 3 kids. Nothing. And we've been fighting for 30 years ever since.
After a long and arduous struggle led by local men and women such as Dolly Hardy and Tom Jakin, compensation was finally agreed to be paid out in 2000. But due to loopholes, such as the clause about a 12-week break in continuous service, many former fishermen missed out.
There was me, and Dolly Hardy was the backbone of fighting for the compensation originally. At first, we hit a brick wall because nobody would believe the atrocities that fishermen had suffered. But gradually, by demanding and forcing it through, Dolly and myself proved that fishermen was full-time employees. I've sit through absolutely dozens of cases, tribunal cases. I've been to where fishermen have won and fishermen have lost. We've been to the appeal courts. They have backed the fishermen. They said the fishermen, when they joined the industry, was registered as fishermen, and when they left the industry, it was covered by the what they call employment tribunal system. The fisherman was covered by Schedule 13 of the Employment Protection Act. So every fisherman should have been paid. About this 12 weeks break in services, or that was just to cover up to cut the costs. And I am confident that everybody in the end will be paid.
Organisations such as the Grimsby Association of Fishing and Trawlermen have continued the struggle to get these injustices rectified.
The thing was, the government decided to pay out, but the criteria at the beginning was to get a claim to begin with. You had to be fishing in 1974 and have 2 years continuous service before that. That was before you could even make a claim. Right, so many people made the claims, many people got turned down, but then there was also a clause within the payout which said if you had more than 12 weeks not sailing on an Iceland vessel, your claim finished and started again after the 12 weeks. So because of this, a lot of fishermen, some missed out on everything, and some, like myself, we had more than a 12-week break where I was put into a North Sea ship as mate, and I was basically an Iceland fisherman. my claims stopped. So all the previous years, from 1954 up to 63, I didn't get paid for. And it started from when I went back into the Iceland shops in 1963. So now the Ombudsman ruled that this 12-week break was an absolute mess. In fact, the whole scheme was a mess. Since this, there were 5 test cases, of which I was one of them. The Ombudswoman filed that we should be paid out, and any such cases like that should be as well. So now what's happened? The government have looked at it all again, and they've scrubbed this 12-week break altogether, made a different approach, and so now we're hoping there's going to be a lot more of these guys that missed out is going to eventually get paid out.
Like, I was one of the people that applied in the early days, and because I'd had breaks in service, things like they told me it wasn't worth applying, so I never bothered. And then after a few years I found out that people had been compensated that didn't have anywhere near the seed time that I added. Of course, when I asked about it about a year or so ago, they said, oh, that's all finished, but it's coming out again, so you've got to reapply.
The government have finally agreed to review the original ruling, opening the doors for nearly 1,000 more men to make their claims. But as this morning's consultation highlighted, there are still issues to be resolved.
Well, today was the consultation, and we have identified some problems with the rules that the government have come up with. For example, they're saying the only people they will consider are people who applied under the previous scheme back in the year 2000. But I know of a number of people who never applied back in 2000 because they looked at the rules and thought, I don't qualify, because of these rules about a break in service. As I say, it's not like a factory, so they thought, I don't qualify. So that's something we have to put right. We have to say there are people who didn't apply under the previous scheme who should be eligible. There's some ships, people said, went to Iceland, aren't on the list of eligible vessels. So things like that, we've got to iron out those details. So we'll be speaking to ministers, we'll be collating all the responses from today. My staff have worked really hard on this event, have been in talking to people, taking details from them. We'll put all this information together, present it as part of the consultation, and hopefully get the rules amended to include some more people. And once those forms are available in the summer, we'll help people fill them in and get them submitted so they get their money as soon as possible.
With over 100 ex-fishermen in attendance, the debate was lively and a great opportunity for the men to reminisce about old times. With the Heritage Centre becoming a refuge and recreational space for those involved in the industry, the announcement that former fisher and trawlermen will be granted free entry to the museum was welcome news.
But the other lovely thing about today, Sue, who runs the centre, wants these men and their families to make more use of the centre. It's their centre after all. And everybody who attended today, who we've got names and addresses for, is going to be given a free pass so they can come and visit the centre anytime they want in the future. And I think that's a lovely thing to do.
The fishermen nowadays, they're all in the 70s, 80s, 70s. They ain't got a lot of money, and to think they can just come here and stand and look back on the memories. That's what fishing heritage is about, isn't it? That's brilliant. That is a real good thing.
This is James Radcliffe reporting for Nunny TV.